My friends, I'm going to kick this off with a simple warning. This is a spoiler to a future character, and I'm going to cover another character just super briefly, but it does tie to a palace. I'm not going to go into story spoilers in any significant way, but it's related to this video in a minor way. So if you are the kind of player who's just going in blind to everything, doesn't want to know anything, then you probably want to click off of this video. But otherwise, if you don't mind a very minor spoiler in terms of something to do with the next palace, again, not going through the story itself, then feel free to stick around. Spoiler warnings out of the way. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's do this. So today I want to talk about a navigator who is coming out in a week from now, or just about a week from now, and that is our new friend Yumi. She is going to be a 5-star navigator character, and she's created a bit of a buzz in the community for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's our first 5-star Navi, so it's just going to be the strongest navigator we have. Second of all, we will have 3 fight guild bosses soon. I'm thinking the next patch or very shortly thereafter, which means that for all 3 fights, you currently have 2 navigators, and you'd be missing out on 1 potentially. That said, in those fights, I believe it takes your top of the 2 scores, just from what I've talked to other people about. So it may or may not matter, but just something to call out. And 3, originally, she was a character who went to the standard banner. Matter of fact, when you see what I have for my Phoebe, you should know that I got mine from standard pulling. I never pulled on a limited banner for her. So in the same vein as Minami earlier, we were expecting that she would come directly to the standard banner, basically after her limited banner goes away. But given what they do with Minami waiting 6 months, we currently don't know if she is going to follow the same suit or not. So a lot of people are kind of looking at this like the Minami situation and saying, okay, given the history and this uncertainty, what do we do? Now, we would hopefully have a live stream just a couple days before, like we typically do for new patch content updates. Maybe they'll address it there, but as of this recording, we just don't have that information present. So what I want to do is I want to tell you a bit about the character, why she's strong, why you may or may not want to pull for her. I'll give you my thoughts around my pulls, for example, and we'll just kind of go from there. This is not a full build guide video. Obviously, I'll do build guides, on their own kind of dedicated thing, but this will give you a bit of an insight into what she does for your team or doesn't do for your team. With that, like and sub, help me hit that 10K mark, and tell me your cat or dog name in the comments. You know how YouTube works. And so let's just dive in, and we're going to pop over to the character sheet here. Let me pull her up. So unfortunately, you're going to see some very wild translations in this client. So I'm going to do my best to, I guess, retranslate this into what actually happens for this character. And you're going to notice I have her at A1. This was not a chase. This is just the nature of playing the game. I've gotten her twice off of the standard banner or from losing other 50-50s, just like you could on any other standard character. So I've never chased her personally. But if we look at it, really, I'm just going to focus on these first 2 awarenesses, just out of the, concept that getting to rank 6 can be obviously hard unless you're chasing, and I don't necessarily think you should. So what this skill is saying, and you can kind of read the description and laugh at it, but basically what this means is that when one of your party members uses like a skill, a follow-up, a highlight, Theurgy comes with the P3 characters, we don't have that now, she makes a flavor. They call it poems here, but she makes a flavor. And then when she gets to 3 flavors, when she uses one of her skills, the skill becomes stronger. The thing about the 3 flavors is this is where she kind of gets a little bit confusing. It all depends on what kind of attribute the character has that's using it. So the way that she works is functionally you want her as best as you're able to have teams that have the same elements. So I'll give a great example, a fire team. So you could have on, you could have key, and you could have cattle, and all of them on their abilities are using fire. Why that's important is there's 3 different strengths of this flavor, and that will determine how strong her effects are. So for example, if when she gets her 3 flavors, all 3 of them are fire. So think all 3 fire flavors, or all 3 nuke flavors, or all 3 wind flavors, but they're all the same. You don't have differences in there. That is when she's going to make her premium or premium deluxe cocktail. So it's like the best version of the cocktail. If she has two of the same element, so think, maybe An went and has fire, maybe then, I don't know, Ki went and has fire, and then Minami went and has light. Now you've got two of the three. This will give you your kind of mid-range attribute called a deluxe. And then if you have just a complete mix, so all three characters are different, maybe you used Yusuke, Minami, and An for some reason. So you got fire, light, and ice. Then you just have like your basic rough one. So depending on what skills your characters are using, you're going to have a beginner, middle, or kind of top end cocktail that she makes. And in this, when she goes and uses her skills, which I'll show you in a second, she is going to consume a cocktail if you have one, and it strengthens that ability. So that's the basis of her kit. So right off the bat, you have to think about your elemental ailments, or not ailments, your elemental affinities, and what you're bringing in for your team. For her A1, the reason you're probably going to hear people talk about her A1 is because she has a chance, not a chance, it's a 100% fixed chance, to refill or bring back one of her flavors. So whenever she mixes a cocktail, she gets one of those flavors refunded. So obviously if you're building, say, let's just use an all nuke example, then she's already one step closer to her next cocktail, which is fantastic. So that's her kit. It's all about mixing cocktails. And then how does she use these? What does the actual powers themselves do? So when we jump into it, a couple things to note on her passives. This, every time I organize a bait on the team, this is just saying when I put somebody on the team, I up that property damage, that attribute damage by 4%. So if I put one nuke character in the team, like I just use, I don't know, Leo, then I'm going to get 4% more into that nuke attribute damage. But if I use 2, now it's 8. If I use 3, now it's 12. And so she is really kind of pushing you to have as many of the same elements as you can on a team. She loves mono teams. Shake, this is saying that at the start of battle, oh my god, this is like terribly listed. She's getting flavors for each of the attributes. I sometimes love these translations over here. But yeah, it just says randomly gains 3 flavors based on the attributes, for whoever's in the team. So if you have all the same attribute, then you're getting the same flavors. So this is just kind of starting you off with something to use. But basically, this is all really saying to you, the more of the same attribute you have, also with the cocktails, the better her effects will be. And what are those effects? Well, really, you kind of want to push into using skill 3 with all premium deluxe cocktail if you can. But to go over it, your first skill here is a 3-turn attack up is what this comes down to. And it's based off of her attack damage, so you want to boost her attack stat, jeez. And I'm going to leave that in there. And when you use your cocktails, remember I was talking about the cocktails just a moment ago, you've got, the basic, the mid, and the high one being this deluxe. It will increase the effects by 50, 100, and 120 respectively. So this is what I mean by you want mono teams predominantly with her. Not that she doesn't work with other teams, but the more of the same character element you can get in the team, the stronger this effect is. So think of her as, you're always with fire, always with the nuke, always with ice. Don't necessarily strap yourself down and say, oh my god, I'm having one light character team. You would still get this mid-range. It's just she's far less effective if you're using, one element type for each character versus the same element types. But this is going to be your kind of really nice attack boost for your characters. Your skill 2 is interesting because what this is doing is it's a single target buff, whereas this one was all allies. This is a single target, and it does a couple things. It's going to increase the damage dealt by whoever you target this to. It's also going to give them like a health leech off the opponent for hitting them. And then she'll take one of your non-deluxe drinks and she will make that into a premium deluxe. So this is a way to convert, like let's say you have like the mid one, this will convert it up to the better version. And then her biggest skill, this is going to be another, hits everybody. You can only use this when you have cocktails. And what it does is based again on how many, or I guess the version of the cocktail you have. It's again the 120, 100, or 50% strength of this effect increases the damage of all allies. This says special tune it. Read that as elemental affinity by a certain amount. Again, based off her attack damage. And then for 2 turns, whoever you clicked on, so this is your main target, they get an additional 1.2x multiplier to their damage here. So really the way you play her is you want to make these cocktails by using your skills. If you don't have a premium deluxe cocktail, you might want to convert it with the skill 2, so you get that premium deluxe version, and then you launch your skill 3 on your main damage dealer to give them the biggest boost, but everyone's getting boosted. The other thing to note is for the amount of stats that your party inherits from your navigator, your 4 stars are giving you 15% and she's giving you 20%. So she's just giving you a bigger buff here. So overall, her kit is good. She, I would definitely say, is better than Okion in most things. And if you're pushing scores in, for example, the guild battles or SOS, she is going to help you reach better scores. But she is probably one of the more confusing characters to use and understand. Like the first time you read her kit, even without these kinds of translations, it's not as obvious as say, hey, Queen has a nuke button on skill 3. Skill 1 is AoE. Like it's not that straightforward. So you do have to think about, what cocktails do you have? What is your party composition? Are you trying to run an all mono team? Would it be better on a non-mono team to run Okion if you have, say, an A6 Okion? She just puts a lot more into the thought process. Now she is good though. Now, as far as a weapon, her 4-star is decent. Her 5-star, I think, is a good consolation prize kind of a thing to go for. I don't know that I would directly look for this on her banner. Again, unless you are just spending the money or, are really pushing scores. But it basically does the usual, gives you more of her own stats. And then depending on the cocktail you consume, you get a stronger effect of one of the kind of random things here, which is more damage, more crit, whatever. But then real selling point, she has a chance to reduce her cooldown by a turn, which is just making her use her stuff more often. So that's really the biggest selling point here. So it's a good weapon. I do think you should put it on your consolation prizes whenever that becomes available, but I don't necessarily think you should chase it unless, again, you have plenty of resources. So, as far as what I think in terms of you pulling it, this kind of tug of war that I'm going through is if you are fully the score chaser, yes, you're going to be at a disadvantage without her. So from that perspective, if that is your big goal, if you are like trying to lead a top guild, then yes, I think you need somebody to have her so you can use her. If you're not in that situation and you're, say, free to play, low spender, or you're trying to save resources for someone you really care about, maybe a Cord, maybe a Futaba, maybe a Haru, then I think that she is potentially a skip. And here is one of the reasons I'm going to say she's a skip, and this goes back into the spoilers for Palace 3. So again, earmuffs if you didn't want to hear this. But the character that we get in Palace 3 is a navigator. So if you're worried about the, 3rd navigator slot, then don't, because you're going to get a really good navigator in Palace 3 at a given point. Again, I'm not going to talk about the story. And that Navi is good. So if your only concern is having a 3rd navigator, just wait the extra 2 weeks and then we'll have Palace 3. And then once you're done at a certain point, you're going to have a character that you can utilize. So don't overstress about that specifically. I think you're going to be fine to wait. And then the other thing too is if you're pulling for Futaba later, which is a character a lot of us are going to recommend that you pull, she is at this point in the game the best navigator. Phoebe is still good. It doesn't devalue the functionality of Phoebe or make her lesser of any sort. But for your main damage, you're typically going to want to run Futaba in your big teams. And then Phoebe becomes like your second place if you need DPS. And of course, Puppet's always going to be your defensive Navi. That's just what she's there for. So Phoebe is still used when you have Futaba, especially in things like guild bosses. But at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need to pull for her because you've got other ways to get there. Now, if you love this character, unless they say something in the upcoming live stream, assuming they have it, about her coming sooner than 6 months or sooner than the 6-month anniversary, then you might end up in a situation like Minami where you just don't have a chance to pull her again without some sort of a rerun happening. So just keep your eyes out for that. Obviously, if there's a live stream, every content creator is going to cover it and we'll tell you if there's an update there or worst case community post or Twitter feeds, whatever. So I think that if I'm going to sum this up, you probably have limited resources, or you're a big spender and you're just here because you like me. And if you have limited resources and you're asking yourself, what is a place that I can sit back and save? I think this is that time. Now, my personal thing, and I'm not saying you should follow me in any way, shape, or form, I am not going to go into any sort of a pity situation for Phoebe. I think what I might do is I'm debating between 2 multis to 4 multis, and that's it. So up to 40 pulls, with the concept of I would be okay losing that amount of tickets, if you will, and getting her. Or one of a couple other scenarios would happen, no 5 stars, and now I'm 40 pulls closer to Cord. God, could you imagine if I was chasing closer somehow? So I'm 40 more pulls closer to Cord. Or, you know, maybe I do get a 5-star and it's an off banner. Okay, well now I know that the worst I'm going to do is 80 pulls on Cord. So there's not much of a loss for me. I just want to control how many I'm willing to go. It's not worth it to me to go to 80 and then, you know, play with the 50-50 game at that point. So that's what I'm kind of flirting with right now, is just doing 2 to 4 multis and walking away. I would not go for her weapon. I'm honestly saving my blue weapon tokens because I do the battle pass, so you get 5 per battle pass cycle. I'm saving that for when hers is in there, unless I've won it off of a lost 50-50 on a weapon before then. And I'll just make her the one that I buy first. That's really my strategy for a weapon. Her 4-star is fine out the gate. So that's my perspective. I think you should really sit back and try not to get caught up in the FOMO on this character. Try not to let the worries of Minami and how they treated that standard banner be the driving force of your decision making here. I think that if you really want to save some coins or, you know, tickets or whatever, that this is the time to do it. Again, just know that obviously people that have her, if you can't borrow it in a guild, for example, are going to potentially have better scores than you in Guild Boss, if that's your big driver. That's it. That's my thoughts. So let me know in the comments below if you think you're going to pull for her. I would love to hear kind of that community feedback. Maybe I'll put a poll up later on when it's closer to her banner. And until our next video or live stream, my friends, please take care of yourselves.